Thank you, everyone who's here, who's listening. I am a mother, an Air Force veteran. I'm a woman of faith, and I'm here to ask everyone who will in any way listen to support House Bill 21-1142. And I especially want to give thanks to you, Representative Bacon, for listening into your community. Um, and you as well, Senator Gonzalez, because I know the same thing impacts your community just as much. But I'm here today asking for safe passage for my children, my sons and daughters, so that they can walk safely down the street, so that they can live in their own skin and feel comfortable and feel at home in our neighborhood, in our city, in our street, and in fact, in our nation. A couple of years ago, my 17-year-old son was coming home from a date. About a week before his high school graduation, he was walking home when stopped by police. As a Black mother, that's one of my worst nightmares. And on the night this happened, we didn't have any idea where my son was. We were fearful that something really, really tragic had happened to him. We called his girlfriend, and she said he had left her house long ago and he should have already been home. He wasn't answering his phone. And I had this tracking app, so I was watching this tracking app as it tracked him farther and farther and further away from home. He wasn't answering our calls, and eventually the tracking app went downtown, and that's where it stopped. My husband drove downtown to search the streets where the phone showed that he was located. So all that path my husband drove while I was waiting by the phone at home, watching the phone tracker. I later found out that my son asked the police to let him call his parents. They didn't allow it. The police were looking that night for a Black male, or Black males, I should say, under 20, wearing sweats, who were armed with a knife that a nearby robbery had happened. Well, an attempted robbery. My son didn't have on gray sweats. He didn't have a knife. And when he was stopped at gunpoint, can you imagine the impact that had on him? 17 years old, guns pointed at you for walking home with your headphones on. I just can't imagine. He was a mile away from the crime scene. The police put my son in handcuffs, even though he wasn't armed and posed no threat to them. He was positioned between an officer on either side of him, then between two police cars. And the police drove an eyewitness past him while they shined the spotlight on him. Since it was so dark, that was necessary, or they felt it was. And that 4.5 seconds as they drove the eyewitness past him in a dimly lit, highly suggestive setting, he was identified by the eyewitness as one of the young men who had attempted to steal her truck. And on that information, evidence, if you could call it that, alone, my innocent son spent 3 days in jail, charged with a felony that could have gotten him 2 to 6 years in prison. His only crime, walking while being Black. It took us 6.5 months and a significant amount of money to clear his name. During that time, he was constantly pressured for a plea deal to a lesser offense, but he didn't do that. And he wouldn't do that because he had community standing by his side. He had us as his family standing by his side. So his case was eventually dropped after 6 months with no explanation or acknowledgement of the anxiety and trauma that he had been put through, or that we as his family had been through. My son has not been the same since. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that this happened to your son or your daughter, that they didn't make it home one night, and you couldn't find them, that they spent time in jail and maybe the outcome was different for them. And they ended up spending the 2 to 6 years in prison. That's not a community of human dignity. And that's what we're looking for. We want to change this system so that it's fair to all and that it promotes the human dignity of all of us. Thank you.